You're listening to E-commerce Fastlane, the podcast show to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company, powered by Shopify. Listen to real conversations with partners and subject matter experts as they share proven practical strategies, platforms, and the best Shopify apps to help you accelerate your business. The time is now for you to improve efficiencies, grow revenue, profit, and lifetime customer loyalty. Please welcome your host, startup founder, and strategic advisor, Steve Hutt.
Welcome back to E-commerce Fastlane. I am your host, Steve Hutt, and today I'm really excited to have an incredible guest who's been involved. It's interesting though, he's been involved in the industry, like starting in the early days in eBay. We'll talk about that, and we have a lot of things in common because that's kind of where I got my feet wet in commerce and some drop shipping and whatnot. His name is Sean Henry. He's the co-founder and CEO of a company called Stored, and they're at STORD.com. Now, Sean really started his journey like he was 7 years old, from what I understand. I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more, but being on eBay is so interesting, kind of having this entrepreneurial spirit and then learning about what is available. He then continued on, went to school, I think went to Georgia Tech, and he learned a lot about just kind of the fragmented kind of logistics industry, starting, I think, with the automotive industry first, and that eventually, I think, inspired him to start the Stored company. And just kind of a high level of kind of what they do is they really provide kind of e-commerce enablement software and kind of fulfillment capabilities for direct-to-consumer brands. They really are the location and the technology, and they kind of connect a Shopify store, including marketplaces, and really will allow the infrastructure to allow for a great kind of post-purchase or a customer experience at scale. They have some really big bad brands that they work with, which we'll chat a little bit about in a few minutes. But it's great. They've got a great system. They've even got some funding recently, over $300 million, and big brands that I've seen here like Body Armor and AG1 and Native Soap Company and Tula. And gosh, there's a whole list here. I went through some of the case studies before recording today, and it's pretty interesting how Stored is really changing the logistics landscape. Instead of these separate systems, and I don't know how we joke before recording, but there's a little bit of duct tape going on a lot of post-purchase experience for a lot of businesses. And the nice thing about this platform, it's the single source of truth for the post-purchase, kind of just beyond the buy now button. So it's really cool. So hi, Sean. Welcome to E-commerce Fastlane.
Hey, it's great to be here. I really appreciate you having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's really cool when I learned about Stored because, like I said, being merchant facing kind of in my recent past in Shopify, a lot of brands that I worked with, this was one of the topics or the flavor of the quarter I would have with some of the businesses and say, hey, let's talk a little bit about what your post-purchase experience actually looks like. Who is your 3PL? Do you have a warehouse management system? If it's a wholly owned warehouse, do you have an OMS, which is order management system, or are you just doing it inside Shopify? Have you hacked together something? And the conversation really starts opening up. And I think that's the challenge that I think you have solved, is that you likely have spoken to lots of people and understand the landscape and said, no, we need to kind of like solidify this all down into one platform so that we can help logistics and fulfillment people in a brand to have the best kind of post-purchase experience and then cost-efficient experience, which we'll talk about too. So just would love to hear a little more about the early days and how you got involved with Stored, and let's kind of unpack it a bit.
Yeah, you really nailed the problem we're solving, which is leveling the playing field for brands of all sizes with Prime-like checkout and delivery experiences that do it at the fastest speed, the lowest cost, and highest consumer delight. Because ultimately, those are the elements that drive conversion rate in the cart, retention rate on the back end, and unit economics for a brand. Yet when we looked at the landscape and when I experienced it firsthand myself, you deal with all this fragmentation across multiple vertical software systems and multiple physical fulfillment, shipping, last mile, and returns partners. And you end up in this web that you're trying to integrate all back together. And it's really on you as the brand to figure that out and recreate the same wheel as everybody else. And instead, we wanted to give a scalable, cloud-like infrastructure as a service that brands of all sizes could tap into and grow off of, and instead focus on their customers, their product, their marketing, and let us do the back-end heavy lifting of that delivery experience.
Yeah.
And it really came about from experiencing it firsthand. I did start pretty young. I sold my Christmas presents online when I was 7 years old and didn't love what I got that year. I wouldn't say that exactly was the full start of my journey. That was just the first little data point. But sold products on eBay, Amazon, different marketplaces, then my own websites through middle school, high school, college. It evolved from being the scrappiest, source random products on Craigslist and post those signs around the neighborhood saying I buy used electronics and other items, and then selling them online, to actually importing products I found internationally in the automotive space, electronics space. And then I was studying at Georgia Tech in the business school, operations and supply chain management as a concentration. And I had the opportunity to go work internationally for a large scale automotive manufacturer and really see some of those same end-to-end supply chain principles that I was learning by being my own e-commerce entrepreneur at scale at an enterprise, and saw, wait, it's even more messed up than when I was the small merchant myself. I thought I was going to see the best in class. And so we just took those experiences, and it's kind of that example you gave of digging one layer deeper and deeper and deeper and understanding that, wait, everybody's dealing with the same thing here. And so I would kind of just end this on, if you go talk to a Shopify merchant, what you're going to hear, or not even Shopify, any merchant out there, what you're going to hear is, I opened up my storefront. I went and found a local 3PL as I was getting started. And then I really realized, wait, what am I integrating to what? What are all the data flows here? I've got to connect my storefront to a warehouse management software. I then want to buy dozens of things like tracking and visibility software for my consumer, subscription management software, demand planning software, all these small tools that help me run my business. And none of them really connect into my actual physical fulfillment, last mile, and returns well. And so they end up in this web of complex data and complex systems, frequently hopping from one system that says, hey, you have 700 orders open today, to a 3PL's separate WMS system that says, hey, you have 200 orders open today. And brands just end up pulling their hair out constantly trying to piece this all together. And so that's where we really started our business to be the platform to solve.
Yeah, this is amazing. And one thing that really caught my eye too, as I was doing some research, was, and I think a lot of businesses don't do this effectively, or they've hacked together some kind of Google Sheet or Excel and talking about inventory planning. And I think businesses that have some product market fit, they're likely on Shopify Plus, so they're upwards of millions of dollars in revenue, and so there's a significant amount of data and saying, hey, but what about the seasonality? And then how do I know the lead times to ordering and all that? And then once again, there are separate systems again with technology to figure that out. But I see that that you have kind of you can optimize your inventory strategy through your tool. Can you talk a little about that? Because that is on people's minds right now, where maybe they didn't sell through as quickly as they would have hoped through BFCM. Now they're going into January and they're like, okay, well, what are we doing about that? And are there any learnings as far as the sell-through rate and seasonality and lead times to order and all these sort of things? I just want to hear your mindset and the technology behind that.
Absolutely. Our model is really creating data harmony across all these historical silos so that a brand can order the right amount of inventory, put it in the right markets and the right fulfillment centers, route every order they get from a consumer to the best point of order, inventory and shipping, and always select the lowest cost parcel and even return it through the right throughput. But historically, so many of those are different systems, different providers, different softwares, that it's so hard to orchestrate that. And so our model, it really combines a network with data and software to then optimize all of that. So from the network perspective, we run a distributed fulfillment network, over 10 of our own fulfillment centers, over 50 partner fulfillment centers. All of those are applied on Stored's warehouse management software and transportation management software for what then runs Stored Parcel, the last mile shipping out of those buildings, which is a carrier agnostic service of dozens of existing carriers. But my point in all this is that we aggregate today almost $6 billion of GMV of total sales across all of our brands across that network, which really gives us scale, breadth, low cost, fast speeds. But then what we do is build all this software on top to unify data across those silos so that your order management software at the core provides you inventory visibility, order visibility, planning visibility. So if I go back, when I was giving that example, if a brand gets started, they open their Shopify, They go find a local 3PL fulfillment company. They ship their first batch of inventory to that partner. They integrate their Shopify or storefront from the storefront directly into the warehouse management software. That works for a period of time. That works as you're getting started. You have your first few orders. You're getting to dozens of orders a day. Once you really start to eclipse that 100 plus orders a day, 500 plus orders a day, you're getting to your first few million in revenue. You start to realize that, wait, there's a lot of complexity here. I could probably save a lot of money on my shipping costs if I had a better technology to shop carriers. But wait, I don't really have enough scale to shop carriers yet. So that's an area we benefit. You start to realize, wait, I have more customer service complexity. I'm getting a lot of where's my order calls. I'd like to be able to better control and configure the email notifications I sent out to say, your label's printed versus, hey, your order's actually shipped. You want to be able to enable your finance team to think about inventory costs and holding costs and how much inventory to order and when. And all of this gets done in spreadsheets typically because that 3PL, while they may have a WMS your Shopify is integrated to, you're trying to get data out of that WMS to go transform it on the side and make your own decisions in spreadsheets.
Right.
So instead, we pull all that WMS and other data about what's happening in the fulfillment centers, how much inventory you have. We pull all that data from your storefront about what your consumers are ordering, how your products are trending, and more. And we unify it in our most core platform, which is the Stored One Commerce order management software. And off of that order data, inventory data, customer data, we build all these modular extensions that help you with demand planning to say, let's look at your historical trends, but then also come in and put in marketing events, seasonal effects, and more, and get a suggestion of what is your safety stock level? When do you need to order that next inventory? Actually get a notification that you're running low and you should submit your next purchase order. From an allocation basis, a lot of our brands have inventory across 2, 3, 4 fulfillment centers as they get growing. And we help them think through the more in locations you have, the more inventory on hand you're going to have. So there's an optimization curve between shipping cost and speed and overall inventory on hand. But first, we help them decide to order more inventory. Then we help them decide where to place it across those 2 to 5 locations they may have. And then every time a consumer order comes in, it drops from Shopify into our OMS. We look across the entire network of those 4 or 5 points of inventory, and we say, okay, this consumer's sitting in New York. This unit's in Connecticut. Let's route it there instead of a different location. And what's the cheapest possible parcel to select to get it there when the consumer expects it? And so I could go on, but it's all about unifying this data and breaking down those silos. And that's been the hardest part of our business, is just spending the last 8-9 years building a very end-to-end product. And I believe that that's what sets Stored apart in the market. When brands go through a demo of our software, they're blown away by the complexity and the functionality all in one spot.
Yeah, one thing I found over the years at Shopify was there were some brands that made a decision how they did it. Like, they probably had created their own technology where on the PDP page, so the product details page, one thing that they put on there was messaging saying that, hey, if you select this particular shipping option and what the carrier might be, and sometimes they have multiple carrier options, they give some flexibility to, sometimes the free shipping option is a little bit longer lead time. I think it's very similar to the Amazon kind of deal with saying, hey, it's if here's the free shipping option, and it's 2 days. Oh, but you want it today? Then and then having a cutoff timers, things like that. And so my question to you is is that something that's available in your solution where a brand can have appropriate messaging on the website, and so that it motivates the potential buyer to saying, hey, here's the appropriate price or maybe a threshold for free shipping. And what does that look like as far as my delivery timelines? Being very specific about, well, are we doing IP lookups? Are we assuming where the product is going? Have we gone down the journey of fully populated the address for delivery and then given because there's 2 sides to it. There's the one side is I'm on the PDP page and haven't added to cart yet. And do I show costs and delivery times for shipping? But then there's the proceed to checkout and going down that flow. So I just want to hear 2 sides of how Stored kind of fits into that mix.
Yeah, so I'll answer directly, then step a little back. Very directly, we fit on the PDP page with a delivery promise. We have a module where you can essentially put in your zip code and get a order by, get it by promise from Stored. We then fit in the checkout flow, where in the checkout flow, we power the shipping options for our brands that say, here's the 3 speeds and costs you can choose from. And then we also offer the shipping protection insurance that a consumer can actually buy in that checkout flow. And then we power those post-purchase emails and landing pages. You can select another system for any of those, but you could also modularly use Stored. And the kind of stepping back point would be that the reason a brand would choose to use Stored is because Amazon is one of the only merchants out there that when they say order by, get it by, they're thinking about exactly where you are and exactly what unit they're going to use to get it to you.
Right.
There's other delivery promise systems out there in the market where you can download a Shopify app that does a delivery promise. And it's basically a rough statistical model of what's the average delivery time across any shipment to that zip code or that major metro. And it's a model that says, will I convert the consumer if they like the promise, it's fast enough, but will I also frustrate them if I'm too late and I can't actually make that promise? And so a lot of those standalone delivery promise tools will advertise in their sales decks, hey, it's probably a 65 to 75% accurate promise. Well, we'd argue that's kind of unacceptable because 79% of consumers reportedly won't shop from a brand again if they have a bad delivery experience. And one of those bad delivery experiences is getting a promise and missing it because you may be planning your Christmas, you may be planning a birthday, whatever it is. And so that's the power of vertical integration that a la Amazon, when Stored is making that promise up front, we're already thinking about which unit could actually be fulfilled against that because our in Shopify tools are deeply integrated with our OMS, which are deeply integrated with our self-built WMS. And that vertical tech stack enables that competitive advantage to make a highly, highly accurate promise. But back to the question of just free delivery thresholds, we do the promise, we do the shipping options. We let our brands decide, do you want to charge for the shipping? Do you want to provide a threshold? That's not the tool we offer today, but we do a ton of mystery shopping. And that's really where Stored takes more of a seat in the general commerce life cycle with our brands rather than just fulfillment. And we'll actually go across 2 or 3 competitors for them and say, hey, look, across all of these qualities from free shipping to the speeds they're offering to any inserts or surprise and delight items they did, how is your brand stacking up to your peers? And we will give them advice on things like the free shipping threshold or more to just help them be competitive. And it all comes back to our core belief is that the delivery experience is as important to the conversion and NPS of your customer as the product you're selling itself.
Yeah, I love the delivery promise idea. That's great language, and I think that's what really motivates people because I think people buy from vendors that they trust, and it's nice to have that like literally on the PDP page. It kind of reminds me of a quick story that I'll tell you, and then I want to have your feedback about how Stored solves this challenge. I got invited to a Christmas party. It was an ugly sweater Christmas party, ugly Christmas sweater, and I ordered from a vendor. These were custom made, and we ordered 3 weeks before the party. I'm in Canada, and we selected the expedited shipping option, which was 7 to 10 business days because it was a custom made product, a made to order, and said, okay, great, like a print on demand kind of idea. Then in the middle of the process, there was a challenge with Canada Post. And as we know, they were, and for my American listeners, Canada Post is like the largest carrier in Canada, anyways, most people shop and use Canada Post. It's the most affordable player, even though we have DHL and FedEx and UPS and stuff available too. The challenge is that the party came and gone this weekend. Everything is still jammed up. And so my question to you was, they had a delivery promise. They had a price. Now, I know this is a very outlier case of Canada Post, deciding that they needed to have a better contract. So they went on the picket lines. But I just want to know from your perspective, it's just like, where was the failure here of this particular business offering this sort of service and not realizing it? And then if things were already packaged and shipped, which was not the case because there really wasn't even a tracking number yet, just how could have they created a better customer experience overall, knowing that Canada Post was not operating?
Yeah, really good question. It all comes back to this premise of if you want to be Prime-like, and it's not just Prime, it's Amazon, it's Walmart, it's Target, it's all the major trusted platforms where we as consumers kind of take that breath of relief where we say, oh, it's going to get to me on time.
Yeah.
You want to be able to offer that to every other merchant because that is what drives consumer behavior. Yet, a lot of merchants can't really stand up to that promise on their own. They don't have the technology, they don't have the scale, they don't have the network to do so. Because if you're an independent brand and you're trying to take the fight to these massive enterprises by yourself, you have to piece together so much complexity that ultimately you likely don't have the team, the scale, and more to do. And so it's more about how do we band together all of these independent brands to take the fight to the mass merchants and the mass enterprises out there with their combined scale. And so in that case, what likely happened is that example I was giving earlier of maybe a third-party delivery promise tool, or maybe that merchant just making up their own promise saying, order by, get it by, here's the rough lead times we offer. But it's not actually looking down in their data and saying, do we have the inventory available? Do we have the carrier to make that date happen? Can we manage that carrier if anything goes wrong? And so with Stored, if we were to run that same scenario, what would happen is that Stored has like I mentioned prior, almost $6 billion of GMV we're managing collectively for our brands. We do over 35 million e-commerce packages per year. In the last 12 months, we've delivered to almost 15% of US households, unique US households, and we also ship internationally as well. And then on BFCM, just last week, we did just under 1% of US volume was powered by Stored. And so the only reason all that is important is because we have such scale with these last mile carriers. We offer our customers Stored parcel. And underneath there's about 24 both national and new and emerging regional carriers that we manage. Well, each of them we have dozens of times more scale with than one independent brand would. And so whereas that brand that you dealt with, let's say they gave all their volume for Canada to Canada Post or one carrier because they're trying to get 10, 20, 30% off by giving all their volume to get some economies of scale. Well, if something happens like a strike, they're stuck. They can't ship. They don't know what to do. They can't pivot because even if they go call another carrier, they likely don't have the time to get through the contracts or the technology to ingest that new shipping account into their 3PL or WMS system to print new labels. Whereas with Stored, when we offer that network of Stored parcel, which is backed by over 24 carriers, and we offer the scale across them to get low costs on all of them, but then the technology to shop them on every single order. What happens is that we go, we're seeing a service level failure with a carrier in this market, or we're seeing a potential strike in this market. And we can rapidly pivot across our carriers and print labels real time across any of our carriers while still getting those low cost economics. And then secondly, the benefit of scale is the control with the carriers. Last peak season, not this peak season, we had a major carrier lose tens of thousands of packages for one of our very, very big merchants. And it was our end-to-end technology where we were able to say, here's exactly the trailer number it got on at the warehouse. Here's exactly the sortation center of yours it went to. And we helped them find tens of thousands of packages. And if you don't have hundreds of millions of parcel spend like Stored does under management, you don't have the carrier's ears listening to you to try to go that extra mile and make it happen. So a little bit of a roundabout answer, but it is both the scale, the technology, and just the carrier relationships and management that come with a network like Stored that would help a merchant like that pivot and be more flexible and nimble. Whereas on their own, they're probably going to be pretty stuck, pretty static, and offer a harmed consumer experience, not even by their own fault, just by the market.
Yeah. It sounds like it's almost like a mindset change a little bit about what this, especially the stored parcel option, and shopping the different carriers and stuff for like the best price and delivery times. Like, so I look at it more, instead of it being more of a cost center, I think you've kind of used the language. It's more like a profit center, meaning that you actually can make more money, by having a lower price and giving maybe the end consumer the option to saying, hey, instead of having my own GMV, my own volume, my own kind of discounts baked into my particular shipping account, you're suggesting that there's ways of economies of scale, like just the physical size of stored, that actually turns into a profit center because of lower costs for shipping. So I think that's really interesting.
Exactly. Most merchants spend somewhere between 10 and 15% of all their revenue on shipping, last mile, and returns for their business. Yeah. And so every point you can shave off of that is just more margin and more bottom line for these businesses. And our pitch is, hey, that 10, 15% is going to be spent no matter what. You can't exist as a business without spending it because you won't get your product to your consumers. Well, let us take it from this fragmented, clunky cost center where you kind of feel on your own piecing together all these vendors to this value driver, an engine for your business, and move to the stored platform and scale on one network. And the way I look at it is a lot like cloud computing. There was a time when you wanted to go set up a software business, a website, you had to go set up a server, or you had to eventually open a data center, and you had to manage all of that equipment, all of your latency with your data, all of your scaling factors and capacity, and more. And it was really a distraction for you from just engineering your software. Yet, of course, people have some pride with operating a big data center, having that host self-managed environment, and more. Well, today, every company out there just scales off the cloud, whether AWS, GCP, Microsoft Azure, because they said, wait a second, what if we let a massive platform combine the scale of all of our data onto one infrastructure where I can just tap into it modularly and get the benefits of economies of scale? And instead, I'm going to focus on building my software instead of managing data centers and servers. That's very much our pitch to brands, which is we want to enable you to move to the shared cloud that's going to combine all your scale with modular technology to lower costs for each of you and help you go focus on your product and your consumers while we do the heavy lifting of actually shipping it to them. But you nailed it on the discounts, where we combine so much shipping volume across brands. There's very few companies out there that we can't help them save money on last mile and turn it into a profit center because of our scale and our level of discounts, as well as our technology. Our technology helps us do pretty advanced things like upgrading and downgrading service levels. So you can make that promise for, let's say, order by 5 p.m. today, get it by Friday. Let's say you want to promise that to your consumer today on Monday. Well, typically, you may get stuck saying, oh, I need to buy this service level that's going to get it there in definitively 3 days because I don't want to risk it with a 5+ day delivery and then it gets there on Monday.
Right.
Well, with Stored, we're using proprietary data to say, okay, that unit's in Connecticut, that consumer's in New York. Last time we selected X carrier, it went through Y sortation center and it got from this zip code to that zip code in 2 days or 4 days. Well, we feel confident buying the ground service level and still getting it there by Friday and making that promise for a way lower cost than paying for the expedited method. And we know that with 99+% certainty because of the scale of the data and shipments we do. Going a little too detailed, but it's that data combined with the carrier network, combined with the front-end consumer-facing promise that helps us connect it all together to make it the lowest cost.
Yeah. It's interesting. Another market like the fashion and apparel market, footwear, things like that. I find that the returns are quite high. It's a necessary part of doing business. And a lot of brands will use a Happy Returns or Narvar or Loop, Returnly. I mean, there's a whole list of interesting enterprise mid-market solutions that really that offer a great kind of experience, an exchange experience sometimes, and offering credits in real time to avoid a return or to try to assist in making the swap easy instead of waiting for the return, giving a credit or a refund that they could then apply towards the next thing. So my question to you is that so how does Stored handle that post-purchase experience of returns, and what sort of baked in technologies in there, especially in fashion, because I find it interesting. Where is it resellable? What happens when it gets back to the warehouse as far as cleaning, disposing, charity? I don't know. There's a lot of variables in here when it comes to returns. And the reason I'm asking this question is because I had a fairly large fashion brand that I managed out of LA, and I went to their warehouse, and they have about 4 or 5 locations in the greater LA market. And it's interesting where there's literally there's 10 people working in one room just doing their returns, repackaging, steaming, cleaning, double checking to see if in fact it can be resold. And if it's not, it goes into a separate pile that I guess they're selling for pennies on the dollar. I'm not even sure how the whole process works, but it's so interesting that they had all this equipment and the unfortunate manual processes of having to deal with it. So it's kind of a loaded question because I think there's 2 sides to it. Does Stored handle returns versus these third-party solutions? That means they could get rid of those solutions and use yours. And then what happens in the warehouse from knowing what the next step is for replenishment, back on the shelf, or disposing of it?
Yeah, great question. And something around 10 to 20% of items are returned depending on what category you're in. And so it's incredibly important to be able to offer an easy service. And when you go back to what this is all about, which is about delighting your consumers and driving the highest conversion, retention, and loyalty so that you win your most loyal customers at the best economics for life, I'd argue you can't do that without powering returns, because every major platform out there offers easy, simple returns. And that's the trust gap we're trying to help solve. That trust gap of, do I check out on this website I've never heard of that I just found, that's not offering me a delivery promise? It's just saying 5 to 10 business days for $6 shipping. Can I even return a product if I don't like it? It's all those elements of trust you want to take away and make or enhance and make simple and trusted with your consumers, so that they don't go to that other platform. They don't go look for that product on somewhere they do trust and they have checked out before. They stay on your organic website. And so I believe you have to provide an easy, seamless returns experiences for your consumers. And to your question, it really varies by category. Apparel accessories is definitely the most hands-on from a processing and cleaning, whether that's cleaning and inspecting shoes or steaming garments and putting them back on in bags or on hangers. There's a lot you have to do. But we also do categories like nutrition supplements, health and beauty, where you don't really keep any of the returns from a health perspective and a risk perspective.
Right.
And then we do categories like very durable consumer packaged goods like drink mugs and other, which are very simple to return and have easy inspection processes. And so it is another example of software meets a network meets scale. And so for Stored, we do process returns through all of our 10 plus fulfillment centers across the US that we operate ourselves. And we actually show up to the consumer with those emails and landing pages. Hey, your product's been delivered. Click here to view what was in your box. And on that page, you can go through the return dispositioning process where a brand will set up custom rules and say, here's the 3 reasons they can select to return. The consumer can submit a photo, they can type in notes, and then the brand can either in our platform automatically provide a return label and refund at a certain threshold, or have their team review it and go through each case by case and then email a label to the consumer, which then they put in a mailbox or go to a store and ship it back to a Stored fulfillment center where we process it back into inventory. It is complex, but at the end of the day, we have around 1,500 team members across our 10 plus fulfillment centers employed by Stored, and many of them do deal with the returns processes and some of the complexity we're speaking to.
Very cool. Another topic that I want to chat about is internationalization. I think it's on a lot of businesses' minds. I remember joking with some the brands I used to manage, and when I was at Shopify, and a lot of them didn't ship to Canada, for example. They were just working on building their business in America. And I always make a joke and saying that you realize that if you don't ship to Canada, it's like not shipping to Florida or New York or California. They didn't realize there's 40 million people in Canada or close to it, and that's what's in those states. And then people are like, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. So like imagine just turning off like Florida. They go, yeah, that would be pretty significant for our business. I said, okay, well then how do you ship to Canada? And then so we go down that rabbit hole. And then I think over time, Shopify kind of released their Shopify Markets and our Markets Pro service. I think that was powered at one point by Global E. I think was understanding who owns the product like legally as it crosses borders, and it also can show duty and tax and brokerage kind of within cart. That was one of the reasons why Canadians were very apprehensive about being Canadian. We're apprehensive about buying from American brands, especially if in cart it didn't actually show the fact that, hey, this price is inclusive of duty, tax, and brokerage. Now, progressive brands show that, and they're clear in saying, hey, it's an all-encompassing price. The label's printed, duties prepaid, and it just kind of is what it is. But there's a lot of brands that don't do that, and they have these silly warnings on their checkout pages saying that, hey, we're not responsible for potential duties and taxes that might apply. And I'm thinking, wow, okay, your conversion rate in Canada must be horrible, knowing you have that kind of disclaimer. So my question back to you is that, so what's the thought process now? Because I know you're in Europe now, and you clearly ship into Canada. I just want to understand the mindset around how the technology works and what you're recommending, the duty, tax, brokerage thing, crossing borders, and then is there like a Global E type process? Are we domestically fulfilling orders from within Europe? Are we domestically shipping product from within Canada? Or are we in fact crossing borders?
Yeah, some of this is our entrepreneurial journey of how we build out our product, which is we typically start with the physical service and then expand into the front end technology to the consumer. And so in this case, like in returns we just talked about, we were processing units into our fulfillment centers coming back as returns for years before we actually built the front end technology facing a consumer to say, hey, go through the dispositioning process and get your label from stored. Before that, it was, hey, we'll just integrate our returns processes to a third-party returns application you may buy out there in the market. They'll do the front-end technology to the consumer. We'll do the back-end. Well, over time, as we build out our ecosystem, we started building out the front-end technology for the return process ourselves. Similarly, when we look back across our history, about 10% of our parcels leave the US and go to other markets internationally.
Okay.
But we also do have fulfillment centers in Canada, and we have fulfillment centers in Europe, in the UK, specifically in the UK, in the Netherlands. And so across those markets, while 10% of our products that are stored in the US ship out of the US, we also do hold inventory locally in Canada and locally in Europe and the UK and ship locally in those markets as well. So we provide the back-end infrastructure, but today, like we used to in returns, we still partner with multiple front-end kind of duty, tax, seller of record, other platforms that do that front-end in-cart experience to the consumer. So we interplay with them very well and integrate to them very well. And over time, we want to enhance our capabilities there. But that's a little bit how we think about our product build out, where today we can help a brand ship internationally and even hold internationally and ship locally in those markets. But we'll have some partners, we refer to them on the front end, in-cart duty, tax, seller of record, language conversion, currency conversion, and other elements.
Very cool. So let's say a brand is listening right now. They're, in the sweet spot. They're in the mid-market. They've got, they're doing millions in revenue. I think what's your starting point? Usually like 1,000 orders a month, I think is usually kind of a decent starting point, I believe. But there's a lot of brands doing tens of thousands of orders a month on your network. And so knowing that, like, what do you believe kind of the next steps would be for a business that wants to learn more about stored, seeing what their current process is? I know we kind of talked offline about this mystery shopping report and stuff like that, but can we talk a little about kind of what you believe next steps should be?
Yeah, a lot of times what happens is a brand sees us shipping for a company like Athletic Greens or Seed Health or Legion supplements or Native or Tula or Gooder the sunglasses or American Giant the clothing. I'm just throwing out some names, and they
They're
say,
good ones.
wow, that was the best experience I've had in a long time. Who shipped that? And they'll either look at the address or they'll go back to the email they got and they'll see stored in there and they'll say, how do I get this level of capability? And so we love to meet brands and really understand, what is their story? What are they trying to offer their consumers? What is the level of trust and promise? And if that matches the level of trust and promise we want to give them, we kind of dig in and go all in together. And so that looks like a brief evaluation of just their order data. Where are their consumers? What is their volume? What's their average package size? It goes through an evaluation of their front end storefront, where we'll do that mystery shopping we talked about, and we'll look through qualities like, do you have a delivery promise? Do you have tracking? Do you have text updates? Do you have email updates? Do you, in the cart, try to upsell them anything? Do you try to get them on subscription orders? Do you offer carbon neutral shipping? We'll go through a full analysis, both of the front end in cart and of the back end fulfillment network. And then we'll just give them really a solution proposal and say, okay, after your Shopify or after your custom storefront or BigCommerce or whatever platform they're on, here's the pieces of stored technology we'd recommend you use. And here's where in the stored network we'd recommend to put your inventory and do your shipping. And that would look like whether it's 1 or 5+ locations to hold your inventory. And we'll ultimately get them to a proposal that spits out, here's what we think your cost per order with stored will be to ship and deliver it. Here's what we think your transit time per order will be. And here's how we think that'll impact 4 key areas of ROI. Your conversion rate in your cart, your cost per package, your internal overhead on customer service and other items, and your NPS with consumers. And so that's what our proposal ultimately contemplates. And then brands can go through that full process with us. And our fastest one ever from meeting a brand to fully signing that proposal was less than a week. But normally a few weeks, and then they can start shipping their next purchase order or transferring inventory out of their existing fulfillment partner to our network as fast as they're able to.
Yeah, this is amazing. I'll make sure I update this in the show notes then. So it'll be ecommercefastlane.com/stored. That's going to redirect to where you can get this mystery shop kind of report. And literally it's going to go through all the things. They just ask for your details and your company URL, any competitor URLs, and then your team goes off to it and does all the full research. And I think that's amazing. You're offering that level of service. Like, every brand is not necessarily a perfect fit, but the whole idea here is that at least going through the process now to see what is available, is stored right for you. You don't know what you don't know. And if you feel that you have like some disparate system set up, dedicated return solution, you have all these different other systems that are all running, an OMS, a WMS, you're doing some of the things with inventory planning. Like, it's just, there's a lot of stuff going on. And I always joke about this because whenever I do like an app audit of a particular Shopify business, and I'm really shocked sometimes when I talk to, some of the founders, and they say like, why do you have, like, let's go from top to bottom and discuss all of these things. And a lot of times they have apps, they have no idea why they're there, or they're old, or they've got some other Swiss Army knife thing doing something else. And so it's so interesting. And where I think that's the benefit of like what your team does is like, hey, let's just take a look and see your full experience. And then let's see how we can integrate all or parts of the stored platform into their process. And I think that's really cool that you offer that. And I want to thank you for offering that today.
Yeah, you nailed it. And the last thing I'd leave you with is that the most beautiful part of our business is the bigger we get, the better we get in many ways, because the lower our cost per package is, the faster our speed is. And the more brands we understand the end consumer data with and can offer this level of kind of consultative partnership, and here's what works, and give the best data-driven recommendations. And on that, I would just say, we do not at all fit into this bucket of putting every customer in a box and saying, yep, you just need free 2-day delivery. No,
right.
Some brands want slow, trusted, carbon neutral options. Some brands want 2-hour or less same day in a major market delivery.
Right.
And the beauty of Stored is that with the scale we have over the last 9-10 years, we have that plethora of options, and we can help a brand either set up 2-hour or less delivery in New York or provide that carbon neutral shipping to certain markets. And so those are just two examples of it's all about what is right for your consumers based on your brand experience and how can you mirror that product level trust and promise with your shipping level trust and promise.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, Sean, this has been like very eye-opening to me. And I'm, like I said, being involved in the Shopify ecosystem and a lot of big bad brands that I've worked with over the years, even my own. It's so interesting that this technology is available. And like I said, instead of all these separate systems, it's nice that we're integrating into one. You really are the post-purchase kind of experience kind of platform. You really are there to help. And it truly is a profit center. I'm in alignment with all of this. I want to wish you tremendous continued success with your market and in the Shopify ecosystem. And once again, thank you so much for joining me today. Well, that's it for today's episode. I'd like to thank you personally for being a loyal listener of E-commerce Fastlane. It's my hope that this podcast is offering you a ton of value through growth strategies, tactics, and exclusive insider tips on the best Shopify apps and marketing platforms, all with my personal goal to help you build, manage, grow, and scale a successful and thriving company powered by Shopify. Thanks for investing some time today and listening to the show. I'm so proud and excited that you have a growth mindset and are a constant learner. I truly appreciate you and your entrepreneurial journey. Enjoy the rest of the week and keep thriving with Shopify.